Living with my sister, Lila, feels like being chained to a storm that never stops raging. Her severe autism a relentless force that's turned my life into a jagged, endless nightmare. I was 10 when she was born, a squalling bundle Mom and Dad cooed over, oblivious to the chaos she'd unleash. By the time I was 12, the cracks were showing, her tantrums erupting like volcanoes, screams piercing the house at all hours, dishes shattering when she didn't get her way. She didn't speak, didn't connect, just stared through me with those blank, unseeing eyes, her world a locked box I could never crack. I'd hide in my room, headphones blasting, trying to drown out the thud of her fists against the walls, but it was useless. She was everywhere, her needs swallowing mine, a black hole that sucked the air from our home. Mom would cry, Dad would pace, and I'd sit there, invisible, a ghost in my own family, hating her for stealing the life I should have had. School was my escape, or it was supposed to be, until Lila's shadow followed me there too. Teachers would pull me aside, their pity dripping like syrup, asking how I was coping with such a special sister. Friends drifted away, tired of canceled plans, of me flaking because Mom needed help restraining Lila during another meltdown. I'd hear her howling from the carpool line, windows rattling as she trashed the house, and I'd burn with shame, with rage, knowing everyone saw me as the girl with a broken sister. By 16, I was a pressure cooker. Resentment boiling over every time I had to skip a dance, a date, a single damn moment of freedom because Lila couldn't be left alone. She'd rock and scream, smear food on the walls, and I'd clean it up, hands shaking, teeth gritted, while Mom whispered apologies that meant nothing. I hated her then, a raw, ugly hate that clawed at my chest, because she wasn't just a burden, she was a thief, robbing me of normalcy, of peace, of a childhood I'd never get back. Nights were the worst, when the house fell quiet and the weight of it all pressed down, a suffocating blanket I couldn't kick off. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to Lila's uneven breathing through the thin wall, her presence a constant reminder of what I'd lost. Mom and Dad poured everything into her, therapies, doctors, endless patience, while I got leftovers, scraps of attention when they weren't too exhausted to notice me. I'd dream of running, of a life where I wasn't the sister of the girl who broke everything, but morning always came, and there she was, rocking in her corner, oblivious to the wreckage she'd made of me. I'd watch her, this chaotic force in a fragile body, and feel it, a dark, festering loathing that I couldn't shake. She didn't ask to be this way, sure, but I didn't ask for it either. And yet here I was, drowning in her storm, with no way out but through the hate that kept me afloat. The years stretched on, and Lila's chaos didn't soften, it hardened, a relentless tide that carved deeper grooves into my life, trapping me in a prison built by Mom and Dad's blind devotion. I was 18, supposed to be tasting freedom, dreaming of college, of a world beyond these walls, but instead I was tethered to her, a reluctant warden in a house that reeked of despair. She'd grown stronger, her meltdowns more violent, flailing arms knocking lamps to the floor, her wordless shrieks rattling the windows until neighbors stopped knocking. Mom and Dad didn't see me anymore, their eyes locked on Lila, their voices soft for her, sharp for me when I dared to complain. She needs us, Mom would snap, her face lined with exhaustion, as if I didn't need anything, as if I wasn't crumbling under the weight of their choice to save her at my expense. I'd bite my tongue, swallow the scream, but the hate festered, a bitter root twisting tighter around my heart. They turned our home into a shrine for her, every room rearranged to suit her quirks, her safety, her endless demands. My space shrank, my posters torn down to make way for padded corners, my books boxed up because she'd shred them in a fit. I'd come home from school to find my stuff shoved aside, Mom muttering about Lila's sensory needs, while I choked on the unfairness of it all. I'd wanted to join the track team, maybe even run for real, feel the wind against my face, but practices were a fantasy when I was on call, racing back to help Dad wrestle her into calm after another outburst. Friends stopped asking, my phone silent, my world narrowing to her tantrums and their pleas for me to understand. Understand? I understood plenty, that I was collateral damage, a sacrifice to their mission, and I hated her for it, for being the idol they worshipped while I faded into the cracks. Nights became my battlefield, when the house settled and their voices hushed, leaving me alone with the venom I couldn't voice. I'd sit on the edge of my bed, the one corner still mine, and stare at the wall where her shadow loomed, her rocking a faint thud through the plaster. I'd replay the day, the way Dad's shoulders slumped when she wouldn't eat, the way Mom's hands shook as she cleaned her messes, and I'd burn with a rage that had nowhere to go. They'd given her everything, therapists, special diets, a revolving door of aides who quit when she lashed out, and what did I get? A pat on the back, a tired, "You're so strong," like that, made up for the life she'd stolen. I'd imagine confronting them, screaming that I was drowning, that I hated her, hated them. But the words stayed locked, too heavy to lift. She didn't know, didn't care, just rocked and moaned, a force of nature I couldn't fight, and I despised her for that ignorance, for the way it chained me to this hell they called family. College brochures piled up on my desk, glossy promises of escape, but even those were tainted by her. Mom would glance at them, her lips tight, murmuring about how they'd manage without me, guilt dripping from every syllable. Manage? They built their world around her, and I was the spare part, the one they'd lean on until I broke. I'd shove the papers away, the dream souring, knowing she'd follow me even if I left, a specter I couldn't outrun. I hated her for that too, for the way her existence warped every chance I had, turning hope into ash before I could taste it. She was their sun, their moon, and I was the forgotten star, dimming in her orbit, with nothing but resentment to keep me burning. The pressure of Lila's chaos built like a dam ready to burst, and one humid summer night, it finally broke me, spilling years of pent-up hate into a moment I couldn't take back. I was 20, stuck in that house, the air sticky with heat, and the sour tang of her latest meltdown still lingering. She'd been at it for hours, shrieking, slamming her head against the couch, until Mom had to pin her down, Dad hovering uselessly with that defeated look I'd grown to despise. I'd been in my room trying to study for a community college exam, the one shred of a future I'd clawed out, but her noise bled through the walls, shredding my focus. The pencil snapped in my hand, the crack loud in my ears, and something inside me snapped too. I stormed downstairs, bare feet pounding the steps, my chest a furnace of rage I couldn't contain anymore. "Shut her up!" I roared, voice raw, startling Mom into dropping Lila's arms. Her wide eyes locking on me like I'd grown horns. Lila kept going, oblivious, rocking harder, her moans a drill in my skull, and I lost it, the dam shattering in a flood of words I'd choked on for years. "I hate her," I screamed, fists clenched, tears burning my eyes as I faced them. "She's ruined everything, my life, your lives, this whole damn house. Why can't she just stop?" Mom gasped, hand flying to her mouth, while Dad stepped forward, his face a mix of shock and exhaustion. "That's enough," he said, voice low, but I didn't stop, couldn't, the hate pouring out like poison I'd held too long. "No, it's not enough. I've given up everything for her, and she doesn't even know I exist. I'm sick of it, sick of her." Lila rocked faster, her keening rising, but I didn't care. The truth was out, ugly and sharp, cutting through their fragile bubble of denial. They tried to reel me in, Mom's voice trembling as she begged me to calm down, Dad's hand on my shoulder a weak anchor I shook off. "You don't get it," I spat, turning on them, the real culprits in this nightmare. "You let her take over. You picked her over me every time, and I'm done pretending it's okay." Mom crumpled, sobbing into her hands, while Dad just stared, his silence a confirmation of the guilt I'd always suspected. Lila wailed louder, a feedback loop to my fury, and I stormed out, slamming the back door so hard the frame rattled, the night air hitting my face like a slap. I paced the yard, grass cool under my feet, chest heaving as the weight of what I'd said sank in. But there was no regret, only a strange, hollow relief. I'd voiced it, the hate that had festered since I was a kid, and it felt like shedding a skin I'd outgrown, even if it left me raw. I didn't go back inside that night, couldn't face their tears or her noise, just sat on the porch steps, staring at the stars until the sky lightened. They didn't come after me, didn't try to fix it, and that hurt more than I expected, proof I'd been right all along. Lila was their world, and I was the outsider, the one they'd let slip away. I hated her still, a deep, pulsing ache, but now it was mingled with something else, a clarity that this couldn't go on. I'd broken the silence, shattered their illusion, and though I didn't know what came next, I knew I couldn't stay in her shadow, suffocating under their devotion. She'd turned my life into a nightmare. But that night, I took the first step to waking up, even if it meant burning the bridge I'd been forced to walk. The fallout from that night clung to me like damp rot, a heavy, unspoken rift splitting our house into jagged halves, but it lit a fire under me I couldn't ignore. I was 20, raw from spilling my hate, and done waiting for Mom and Dad to see me past Lila's chaos. Her screams still echoed, her tantrums a daily quake, but I wasn't the same anymore, not after cracking open the truth. I stopped cleaning her messes, stopped rushing to their calls for help, my hands still, my jaw set as they scrambled to manage her alone. Mom's eyes would dart to me, pleading, her voice a tired whisper of, "We need you," but I'd turn away, the guilt they tried to heap on me sliding off like water on glass. I'd given them years, my youth, my dreams, and I was taking them back, clawing for a life beyond her shadow, even if it meant carving it out of their wreckage. I threw myself into escape, a desperate, single-minded push to break free. I'd saved scraps from a part-time job at a diner, greasy tips and late shifts, and now I poured it into a plan, renting a room in a rundown house across town, a sliver of independence I could afford. College wasn't an option anymore, not with the loans I'd never repay, but I enrolled in night classes at the community center, welding, something gritty and real, my hands learning to shape metal while my mind shaped a future. I'd come home reeking of sweat and steel, Lila's noise a faint memory, and collapse on a mattress that smelled of mildew. But it was mine, free of her. Mom called once, voice cracking, asking why I'd abandoned them, and I hung up, the word a slap after all I'd endured. They didn't get it, never would, that I wasn't abandoning, I was surviving, and I hated Lila more for the way she'd tethered them to her, leaving me to fend alone. Packing up was a quiet war, each item a battle won against their pull. I took my clothes, my books, the few photos without her in them, shoving them into a duffel while Lila rocked in the living room, her moans a soundtrack I'd mute forever. Dad caught me at the door, his face sagging, words stumbling out about family, about sticking together, but I cut him off, voice cold. You chose her a long time ago. I'm choosing me now. He flinched, stepped back, and I walked out, the screen door banging shut, a final note to the symphony of her reign. The first night in my new place, I sat on the floor, the walls bare, the silence deafening but clean, and felt a tremor of something new, not peace, not yet, but a start. I'd escaped her orbit, her gravity, and though the hate still simmered, it was fuel now, driving me forward, away from the nightmare she'd made. Life alone wasn't easy, the rent a stretch, the nights long, but it was mine, every hard-earned second a defiance of the years she'd stolen. I'd weld until my arms ached, the sparks a mirror to the anger I still carried, but it was mine to wield, not hers to ignite. Mom and Dad faded to echoes, their calls rare, their lives a distant hum I didn't tune into. I heard through a cousin that Lila's fits had worsened, that they were struggling, and I felt a pang, sharp and brief, before shoving it down. They'd built that cage, not me, and I wouldn't crawl back. She'd turned my world into a living hell, but I'd broken out, built a shaky foothold. And though the scars of hating her lingered, they were mine to bear, not hers to deepen. This was my rebellion, my lifeline, and I'd guard it with everything I had left. Living free of Lila's chaos didn't erase the hate. It just gave it room to breathe, shifting from a choking fog to a smoldering ember I carried in my chest. I was 21, settled into my gritty little life, the welding gig paying enough to keep the lights on, my hands calloused from shaping steel into something solid, something I could control. The room I rented was a fortress, bare walls and a single window. The silence a luxury I'd never known in that house of screams. I'd walk home under streetlights, the night cool against my skin, and feel a jagged peace, a hard-won space where her shadow couldn't reach. But she lingered, not in body but in the echoes of what she'd cost me, the family I'd lost, the years I'd spent invisible. I didn't miss them, not really, but I hated her still, a deep, quiet loathing for the way she'd rewritten my story without ever knowing my name. I built a routine, a rhythm of work and solitude that kept me steady, but the past crept in uninvited. A letter came one rainy afternoon, Mom's handwriting shaky on the envelope, a plea scrawled inside about Lila's latest crisis, a hospital stay after a fit gone wrong. We're falling apart, she wrote, please come home. I stared at it, the paper trembling in my grip, a storm of guilt and fury crashing through me. Home? That wasn't home. It was her domain, a battlefield I'd bled on, and they still didn't see it. I tore it up, bits fluttering to the floor, and paced my tiny room, the hate flaring bright. She'd broken them too, turned them into shells who couldn't let go, and I despised her for that, for the way her chaos had claimed us all, leaving me the lone survivor with scars I couldn't shed. I saw them once, months later, a chance collision at the grocery store that stopped me cold. Mom pushed a cart, Dad trailed behind, and there was Lila, strapped in a wheelchair, rocking slow, her face blank but older, heavier. They didn't see me at first, their eyes hollow, locked on her, and I watched, rooted, as Mom adjusted her blanket, Dad's hands hovering like he didn't know what to do. They looked worn, beaten, a portrait of surrender I hadn't expected, and for a second the hate faltered, pierced by a stab of something softer, not forgiveness, but a weary ache. Then Mom glanced up, caught my eye, and her face crumpled, a silent please forming on her lips. I turned away, heart pounding, and left, the aisle blurring as I walked out, their weight no longer mine to carry. She'd done this, turned them into ghosts, and I hated her for it, but I wouldn't go back, wouldn't let her pull me under again. Time dulled the edges, not the hate itself, but its grip, letting me breathe past it, build something new from the ashes she'd left. I got better at welding, took on bigger jobs, moved to a slightly less rundown place, each step a brick in a wall against her memory. The hate stayed, a quiet companion, but it wasn't all I was anymore. I'd think of her sometimes, rocking in that chair, and wonder if she'd ever know the havoc she'd wrought, the sister she'd lost. But it didn't matter. She turned my life into a nightmare, a living hell I'd clawed my way out of, and I'd made it, not whole, not healed, but standing. Mom and Dad were hers, their choice, their chains, and I was free, scarred but fierce, with a life I'd forged alone. The hate was my fuel, my fire, and though it burned low now, it kept me warm, a reminder of the strength I'd found in the ruins of her storm. Time passed, and I kept my distance from my family. Welding kept me busy, my hands rough with calluses, but in the quiet hours of the night, I still thought about them, about Mom, Dad, and Lila. Not with the burning rage I once carried, but with a heavy, dull ache, like a scar that never fully healed. One day, I got a call from the hospital. My mother's voice was trembling, barely holding together. Lila isn't doing well, she said. Just that. But in those few words, I heard everything she couldn't say. I sat in my empty room, staring at my phone, my heart pounding. Should I go? Was I still a part of them? In the end, I drove to the hospital, not out of obligation, but because, despite everything, some invisible thread still connected me to them. I found my parents in the waiting room, worn down, looking smaller than I remembered. When my mother saw me, she didn't speak. She just broke down in sobs, clutching my arm as if I were her last anchor in a sinking world. Lila was in her hospital bed, looking different, quieter, weaker. The storm that had once raged so violently inside her seemed dimmed, her body frail under the fluorescent lights. For the first time, I didn't see her as the force that had destroyed my life. I just saw a person, a lost, fragile person, who never even knew the damage she had done. I didn't cry, I didn't apologize for my absence, I didn't suddenly love her, but I let go of the hate. And that, more than anything, was what set me free. Would you like any further refinements?